Ada's lies and death. But Leon doesn't have time to mourn. An alert echoes throughout Nest, blaring that there are only a few minutes left. Leon begins his final escape. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Resident Evil 2. We have a timer running, so I'm just going to say, let's just jump right back in. Alright, what do we need? So I said I had a plan. I don't know if we're going to get any gunpowder. So I just kind of want to use this. I may have gone a little bit overzealous with my ammunition in this. So, I'm going to put you here. The game's making me feel very rushed right now. If we get some ammunition on the way, then so be it. Okay, good. That will help a little bit. And the fuel we can probably grab at some point. I want to grab a health item, get a combat knife, and I basically want grenades for this, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that would be more than enough. So I guess an extra health item might not be a bad thing. I think that's all we're really going to need. How many health items do I have? I don't have a lot of shields left, so I'll actually go with an aid spray, just on the off chance that I need that later. And I think this will be good enough for us for now. Honestly, until I find ammo, shotgun's kind of dead to me at this point. If we pick up stuff along the way, then so be it. And if we don't, we don't. So, whatever. Okay. Anything up here that I need or could grab. Oh. Just enough time to get around there. There we go. And did I miss an item? You know what? It doesn't matter. Let's just go. Let's just go. We're okay.
Until detonation.
You don't need to remind me that I'm on a timer. Okay. There we go. Yep, there you are.
Is this a fucking joke?
And that door should be open because Sherry already opened it for Claire before they took the elevator down.
Keep going.
All right. And this is our end chance, I do believe. So, like I said, I didn't think we were going to pick up much of anything for the as far as like other ammunition might go, and so what we'll do here is just take the fuel that's left. I don't think we're going to need it, but actually we can't do that, can we? Because we actually need to make sure we can take the battery with us, and I think this is all we're going to need. So we'll drop that, and I'm gonna say we'll drop this for now. This should hold us over. Oh wait, where did I get? I forgot I had a red herb there. I guess I could hold on to that. Do I need it though? I'll just take the fuel. And we'll do...
Attention. Self-destruct secret. 7
Good enough.
minutes until detonation.
Good enough.
To the bottom level train.
Yeah, I know. Oh, too late.
Arrive at the bottom level. Minutes until detonation.
Shit! Gotta get out of here. Can't believe I actually miss her.
Leon?
We made it.
Just like I said we would.
Who's this?
This is Sherry.
Okay. Jesus.
What was that?
I don't know. I'll go. You take care of Sherry.
Let's see, was there another one over here I missed? No, it's ahead of me. Oh, there you are. Still more? Oh, yep. Sure is. Okay. Let's see, what do we got to work with? Not a lot, but enough, I think. More than enough, really. I don't know that we necessarily need the fuel. I kind of want to be dangerous and see how it works without. It's not like it's a. I don't think it's very critical for my position here. This can help though. And the knife is honestly just there for, you know, if you're in a really bad situation. Well, I must combine my last of my items. Am I even hurt at this point? I don't know if I am. Okay, let's see. Oh, we can't have that. There you go. All right. Now everything's good. Okay. Let's see what that was. Oh. Yeah, okay. All right. Can the... Oh no. Door's not working. All right.
You want more bullets? Be
Come
my
on.
guest.
Give me the eye. We know it's in there. Give me the eye. Uh-oh.
Want some more?
Oh, just take it, I guess. Oh my god, look at the train.
you guys, like, boyfriend and girlfriend?
No. We're just... well, we actually just met... last night.
Yeah. That would have been one hell of a first date, though.
Yeah, you have no idea.
Look! He might be able to give us a ride.
What if it's not just the city?
Get Sherry out of here.
Come on.
Hey, that was Live Another Day by the Great.
He was friendly.
So, is it over?
I don't know. But if it's not, we'll stop it. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, you damn right we will.
As long as we stick together, we'll be fine. Come on.
Hey, you guys can adopt me.
Adopt you.
We can get a puppy.
Puppy.
And a parrot.
Parrot.
I always wanted pets, but my mom said they're too messy.
Next up on this boring Wednesday is a song to get your blood pumping.
Where did the time go? Running scared for so many years, and now I'm here. I look round, but I don't see anyone. Everything I love's come and gone. I walk alone with a loaded gun. What went wrong? There's two sides to every story. The defeat of the pain of the glory. It all burns away. But how did it go so wrong? Now it's all gone. Where did my life go? I look in the mirror, but what I see, it ain't me. These streets are paved with fantasies of what the other half can be, but now it's flying in the breeze. There's two sides to every story. The defeat of the pain of the glory. It all burns away. But how did it go so wrong? Now it's all gone. Forget yesterday. It ain't worth the pain. It ain't worth the pain. The pain of remembering. There's two sides to every story. The defeat of the pain of the glory. It all burns away. But how did it go so wrong? Now it's all gone. Forget yesterday. It ain't worth the pain. It ain't worth the pain. The pain of remembering.
Okay. So, before moving on to the title screen like I usually do, I just wanted to comment that that song they play at the end, which I absolutely love, is the same song Leon was playing on the radio at the very beginning of the story. And so, if you kind of pay attention to what was going on there throughout the game, they've been there for basically one night. He got there, they both got there late, and they've been there for a day. And so when he was there, apparently it was a Tuesday because they said this boring Wednesday, and it was the next day. But that was the track he was listening to while he was, while he was driving into the gas station area. All right. This time that is a good place to close things out. So my apologies for the abrupt start at the beginning. To recap from the previous episodes, since I didn't get to really talk about it, we got to learn that Ada was not what she appeared to be, and I think she threw some strong hints at that at a few points in the game. But it is really hard to pick up on that if you don't know the entire backstory of her. But she just some of her behavior at some points and some of the stuff she said to Leon near at the end to me kind of seemed a little out of place. For the situation they've been in this night. But we got to learn that she was a mercenary. She wasn't an FBI agent. Annette kind of called her out on that, and you could probably have picked up something was amiss between them when they were doing their conversations, because Annette seemed not necessarily to know who she was, but knew what she was there for, and that it wasn't anything official. And so that's what we essentially learned at the end of the previous episode. So we scoured the lab, got the G sample. In continuity with Claire's storyline, that's what set off the self-destruct in the place and set off the emergency system. So Claire would have left at that point, which kind of falls nicely into the continuity there. Plus, Claire had to have gotten there first to have opened the case for Leon. Otherwise, he would not have gotten the sample as easy as he did. Now, moving into this part, with the self-destruct running, we started, like I said, on a timer, and we essentially made our way to the bottom platform, reconnected with Claire along the way, fought... And in this particular episode, we started off by essentially kind of being intercepted by the tyrants who we had to fight on the way down towards that bottom platform. And we had to take a different platform because Claire had already gone down with the train, so we missed the train at that point, and it was already headed down that way. So I think simultaneously, timeline-wise, we're probably pretty close in time for fighting. She was fighting Birkin in his G4 phase, and we were fighting Tyrant in his kind of, he had kind of clearly been destroyed a bit. And if you go back into some of the original lore of Resident Evil, usually the trench coat, I think, is supposed to be there to restrain them from mutation in some way. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but when the coat gets destroyed, usually they start to get worse and worse as they go. And that's been a common trend in these types of games. So pressing forward to the ending, we got to a catch-up point where Leon comes onto the train. So he was there basically at the last minute. That's why he was able to get on board in the previous ending. So when we got to the end of first run, we knew that he made it. We just didn't really get to see it up until now. So now we know how that played out a little bit. And from there, we knew something was gonna happen because we didn't really get an ending with that. It was just pretty much cut us off. And then at the very end, there was kind of a short epilogue where we could see something got on board, and I think it's pretty clear that it was Birkin from the get-go because Tyrant was gone in that story, and this one, like I said, there's kind of a continuity error with there because they make it sound like it's the same Tyrant. I don't think it's supposed to be. I think maybe it was from the writer's perspective, but like going back to the original Resident Evil, there were 6 of them on the helicopter that dropped off the Tyrant to begin with, and in Resident Evil 3, the original, you find out that there were a lot more in the disposal facility at that point, and that continues on into Resident Evil 3, the remake. So we'll kind of pick up more on that in the next game, which we'll be doing since we'll be picking up Resident Evil 3 next. And so I don't want to comment on that too much, but we did know that we did know from the originals that there was more than one in the city. And so I just wanted to bring that in because that could be looked at as a continuity error, or it just could be looked at as there's 2 different Tyrants, because there should be more than 2 different Tyrants in the city at this point. Now, as far as that story goes, then, we knew that Birkin had got on board. I think that was pretty clear. He's the one that keeps coming back more and more, and he's the one who tore the Tyrant to new one in the first run since we played as Claire. And those 2 storyline differences are the same no matter what you do. So it's not a first run, second run thing. The main thing second run changes is just essentially how you get to the police station, who meets Marvin, and how the ending plays out. And some things are just a lot harder in some regards. So otherwise, most of the stuff pretty much plays out the same. Leon and Claire have separate stories, which I do like. And then when it comes to the ending, this time we got to see how it plays out. Whoever plays second run gets to have the final confrontation with Birkin, which in this case, because Leon was second, he's the one who goes, which to me makes a bit more sense. I feel like somebody should clearly stay with Sherry. I feel like that should be Claire. That's the one that Sherry knows. And, Leon's a cop. He's the one who's supposed to be putting his life in danger, comparative to Claire, who's a civilian. Just kind of, if that's the way you want to look at things duty-wise, that's what they're supposed to do. And so we had that confrontation with Birkin on the train. He still came back for more. We probably kind of figured out that he was. And we were able to kind of hold him back enough so we could uncouple the train and kind of leave him in the lurch, so to speak, and we were able to escape. And there at the end, we got to see Claire, Sherry, and Leon kind of walking away, basically trying to, it's a new day, and they were able to get out, which is good. So we actually had a happy ending there, as far as what we were able to see. Now, just kind of a in general thing when it comes to this game, so the Resident Evil 2 was my first Resident Evil that I ever played. The original Resident Evil that came out in 98, I think. It's literally right in front of me, and I'm not even looking at it. Yeah, 98. That was the first one I ever actually played, and to me, I didn't necessarily feel that Resident Evil 2 needed a remake. I'm glad they did it because the station is so much cooler in this, and they did a lot of really cool stuff with the story, the gameplay, all that stuff, and made this amazing game out of it. But I still feel like the original game has a lot of, I wouldn't necessarily go back to it at this point, because we have this now. But I didn't really feel like there was anything that was terribly off about it, except for maybe the science. They did remove a lot of the pseudoscience from the game by taking away the spiders, taking away the insects, and just things that don't make sense. Because the only thing in this game that I feel like is really breaking the science is some of the zombies shouldn't have been walking around because, again, viruses can't infect dead tissue. It doesn't work like that. You need live cells to infect something. And so the original lore of this, I do believe it's said somewhere in the original lore, and Resident Evil 3 really builds on this, which is why I'm excited to do that next. But the idea is that they are not dead. The ones who died never got back up. Some people did die from the viral infection. The ones that weren't killed are turned into what we're seeing here. And there's only one in general that really breaks that lore, which is Elliot, because he gets ripped in half, and he should have died right then and there because of that. And there are, of course, some where it's like you shoot them in the face how many times, and they're still walking around. But, I think as far as gameplay mechanics, they had to do something like that because it would just be too easy otherwise if all it took was the one-shot type thing. So if it was a little bit it'd be a little bit too easy if they didn't do something like that. And so for that reason, I can appreciate that mechanic. But Elliot still we got to forget about Elliot. We got to take him out of the picture because he's ruining the idea of this being a viral infection. And so I think as far as the remake goes, with this being the first run, I would say, for me, gets pretty much a 10 out of 10 in terms of storyline, and for the most part, the gameplay kind of following the science a lot better. And just the game overall, I would say easy 10 out of 10. If you look at the second run, that's where I start to not like so many things. There are certain aspects of it that I really like. There are some continuity aspects they throw in, but there are some where they really break the continuity that I don't like. For example, if Claire should have got to the parking garage first, and she runs into lickers feeding off of dogs. If Leon had come in there second, which he needs to in terms of the long term, then he should have been coming across the lickers, feeding on the dogs, not vice versa. That kind of stuff, and fighting the same boss fights over and over again, doing the same puzzles, that kind of stuff. I don't care for that kind of stuff. I think what I would have preferred to have seen, and the original game had some of these issues too. It's just I feel like they both tackled them in a little bit different ways, and I don't feel like this one really improved on them necessarily compared to it. I like that the stories are separate between the characters. That helps a bit. And that if you play it the way I did it, where I did Claire first, Leon second, that follows through a little bit more cleanly in many regards. And like I said, the major one that just comes to my mind is the dogs versus the lickers in the kennels. But there's a lot of really good stuff, like, Claire has to get to the lab first to open the case. Leon comes in and says, oh, that was easy, so he had to get there second. That kind of stuff was really well done. And so there are certain aspects of it that I think were really good. It's the it's the repetition that I didn't like as much. The repetition and the fact that you start the game off by being at the station 20 minutes later or whatever it was. I wish there was a period where you could have run around the city a little bit and not just have that jump, that kind of abrupt jump. And then they kind of cut the intro video up into little pieces instead of just playing the whole video, which if we didn't want to see it, you can just skip it. So just play the whole video again. That part I didn't like either. So it's little things like that that kind of tore down my overall thoughts on the game a little bit when I first played it, and I started getting bored with it pretty quick. After my second playthrough, when I started getting into doing the opposing stories, that's when I started really losing interest in the game, and that's where I start to see it as where it kind of falls apart for me a little bit. So it's like I have a lot of good things to say about the game, but also some negatives, and overall I think it was a really good game. I like it as a remake. There's just those aspects that I didn't like. And so I was going to say something else about the remake aspect of it. If you look at the idea, though, like that they took out and fixed a lot of the pseudoscience, I think that stuff was really cool. That stuff was really, really well done. Resident Evil 3 builds on that a lot more and a lot better, though. And I think the only Resident Evil game that, to me, has hit the nail on the head with the science is really Resident Evil 7. And I'll discuss that when I get to replaying Resident Evil 7. But Resident Evil 3 does a really good job of that as well. The one thing that I kind of started digging into a little bit more with this, and I did this in the first run when I was kind of running around the lab as Claire, is kind of discussing the differences between the T-virus and the G-virus. Because one thing that, that comes up in this game is you're always talking about the G-virus. You really never talk about the T-virus. And if you follow the story through on this, like the first game and the third game, it's the T-virus that's causing most of the issues. It's not the G-virus. If you really follow through with a lot of that, and if I remember going back to the original second game, the samples that Birkin had were not just the G-virus. He had the T-virus in there as well. There were two separate samples in it. And the G-virus is what was creating those G-adults. That was coming from Birkin himself. But the T-virus is really what's causing a lot of the major issues. It's causing the zombies and the other things like that. And the game might be setting it up so that it's not, so it might not be working that way, but they never talk about the G-virus in the third game at all. It never even comes up as far as I can remember. And so what I was doing was kind of comparing the two. It's like, well, if you look at the T-virus, what's it doing as far as people go? Because that's where I'm kind of focusing my attention. What do the T and G-virus do? The T-virus is essentially killing most of its hosts when it comes to humans, and the ones that don't die are turning into these things. And to me, it reminds me a lot of rabies, the rabies lyssavirus. Which what that does in its host is before it kills them, because it targets the central nervous system, which is, and we don't know quite exactly how it does it, but it's a low transmission virus because it's transmitted by bite. And so if you get bit by somebody with rabies, it's not likely that you're going to contract the virus, but it's also fatal, so there's a reason to take it seriously. The likelihood of you actually getting infected is less than 50%, I believe. Greater than 1%, it's on the lower side of that, but it's somewhere between 1 and 50% where it's like the transmission rates vary quite a bit, depending on different situations. And it's on the low end of how that actually transmits, because a bite is not a great way of infecting individuals. There are other much better methods for that. And so it's a bit difficult to transmit. And so people always ask, well, if they get bit, shouldn't they turn? It's like, well, no, because if the bite didn't transmit the virus, then there's no reason that they would turn. They have to be infected, and they're not. And that's a perfect explanation for why a virus being transmitted by a bite would not infect another host, because it's just not as likely to do that as if it was a respiratory virus that was spread, because that's a very efficient way of spreading. It's very hard to stop something that spreads through respiratory means or aerosolized means, which is airborne, which is a little bit different, which a lot of viruses do. And so when it comes to the T virus, like I said, it kind of reminds me a lot of rabies for that reason. And what it's doing is it's killing some of them, and it's not killing everyone. The ones that don't die become the zombies. What they're using it for, to me, doesn't make as much sense, because if it's killing the humans, why use it on the humans? What's making the tyrants versus the infected that we're seeing? That part doesn't quite make a lot of sense. They have to be delivering something to the people to make this happen, which is why I don't really understand why it's doing what it's doing. If it delivers something particular, it should be doing the same thing all the time. That's another reason that I say the science falls apart. Is the original games, they had all kinds of hosts that didn't make sense. The main ones in this story, because they fixed it up a lot, the main ones that don't make sense are the alligator and the plants. Those do not make any sense. I don't know of any viruses, pathogens at all that can transmit between endotherms and ectotherms, because endotherms, you're looking at mammals and birds, versus ectotherms, which is basically almost every other existing thing on the planet. But alligators are ectotherms. They wouldn't transmit between them. And plants, because plants are a bit more extreme, because plants are genetically nothing alike us except with certain regards. I mean, they're very genetically dissimilar from animals, that it just doesn't make sense that they would transmit across the two. So that's where I feel like some of the science really slips. It gets into the pseudoscience. Now, the G virus is a bit different. We only see the G virus really impacting Birkin. They don't really say what it does otherwise. And if you look at all the stories in Resident Evil where the G virus is involved, it's very similar to what happens to Birkin, which is that it's not doing the same thing that T virus is doing. It's inducing these active mutations in them and causing this kind of exponential cell growth that, to me, is a lot more similar to cancer. And because what cancer cells tend to do is they replicate, because that's what cells generally do. That's what any living thing wants to do. It wants to replicate. And so it infects these cells. It turns them basically into these cancerous type cells. And I think the idea of what they're trying to do with it is make these things into kind of a war machine type situation. But it's inducing this active mutation that's causing these things to grow and change in ways that's just out of control. And there are some cases, if you look at Birkin, where he's got some symmetry to him that you'd expect with life, but as he goes on and on, he sometimes gets a lot worse. Initially, he looks pretty bad when you see him. Then he transitions to that G2 and G3 phase that we see in both stories, and then G4 in Claire's story, and then G5 here at the end with Leon, where he gets a little bit more out of control and a lot more like cancer rather than a living organism. And because cancer cells do a few things that regular cells can't do. First of all, if it's truly a cancer and not just a tumor growth, it's a stem cell, which means that it can become any type of cell it wants. And if you look at specifically the cells that, what cancer cells do versus regular cells, whether it's tumor cell or any other type of cell, the cancer cells, the truly malignant ones, what they're doing is they want to replicate, and they break a few control systems that cancer cells have, which I would say the G virus is clearly doing, which is that the cells can grow uncontrollably. They're bypassing the regulatory systems that would keep them from growing out of control. They probably don't need to be attached to a surface, because cells in us, in humans, and in other multi-celled organisms, as far as animals go, generally need to be attached to a surface to grow. They can't just grow out in the environment. It basically keeps our cells, they have to be hooked into a tissue to grow, if it's in that case. And so there are some cells that can grow outside of them, or at least develop outside of that, but most cells, many cells are restricted to being tied up in a tissue where they can't grow out of control if they're separated from that tissue, because you don't want that to happen. If you have a cell in your body that breaks away, you don't want it to grow into another organ system or something that you can't control. And the other control that goes on them that the G virus is clearly breaking is the density dependence issue, which is what causes the cancerous buildup, the tumor growth. Because our cells, typically what they want to do is they want to grow so that they're kind of in a uniform layer, but the cancerous cells will grow so that they start basically disforming that layer, and they will just outgrow their density. So there's just a lot more cells there than that there should be, and it starts forming tumors, essentially. And the really scary thing about cancer cells is, like I said, they're stem cells, which means what cancer cells initially will a lot of times do is they'll form things like blood vessels that can connect with the rest of your body and allow them to spread and grow elsewhere. And that's where they get really dangerous. And if you look at what the G virus is doing to Birkin, it's making him grow out of control. And the more we damage him, the worse he seems to get. He kept coming back, and that's what made his character so cool to me. So I go back to the original game and this one, and it's like, well, Birkin, I know one of my friends was saying Birkin's one of their favorite characters, and I would agree to an extent just because his storyline to me, is really interesting. And that's the main difference between those two viruses, is you have one that's acting a lot like rabies and one that's turning cells into more of a cancer cell. And so I can see where there's applications for these, where they could use them for like a biological weaponry type stuff. But, they're just, the T virus, at least, they're taking a little bit out of context in terms of how that's being used. They're not really giving us enough information, and it's coming off to me more as pseudoscience. I'm fine with what it does to the humans, at least. That stuff makes a little bit more sense. And I'll kind of ignore the lickers and the red faces from the first game a little bit because, they got to take some creative liberties and make some cool stuff there. And the only break in the continuity there is between those particular games, because they didn't have lickers when they did the original first game. So that's why they brought those back, is because it was a part of Resident Evil 2. But those come from normal humans, so it's like a progression of what was happening to them in some ways. Or maybe the lickers in this case are actually meant to come from the G virus. I don't know. That might make a little bit of sense too. But to me, they just didn't seem like they were growing out of control. They were just really disturbing, if anything. So to me, it seemed like more of a incubation period in like a person that was infected with the T virus, maybe, if it was done in a particular way, if they were delivering something different to them. In which case, I can see the virus being used for what they were planning to use it for, or what they were selling it off as, which was to create these monsters, not so much to sell the monsters themselves, as I think Leon talked to Ada about that when they were going into the sewers right after Kendo's shop, essentially. So that's kind of the difference between the two viruses, and I think in that way the G virus is really interesting in terms of what it was doing. But of course, the T virus is what we're seeing most of the repercussions with. And so we're going to hear more about that in Resident Evil 3, so I'm going to kind of leave that off there. But I kind of talked about that a bit when we were going through the lab in the first playthrough, and so I kind of wanted to bring first playthrough of this story, and so I kind of wanted to bring that up and go back to that, because I like to talk about science. And so, I don't know that I necessarily have much more to say on Resident Evil 2 itself, so I think that would be a good ending point, is that we have another game to go in this story. The last story of Raccoon City that I'm going to be doing, at least, which is Resident Evil 3, which is where we will learn a little bit more about the T virus, because that's what Jill is following up on. Because Jill doesn't probably know much about the G virus, if anything, and so that's where they start to really get into the good science for the T virus. Some of the stuff that I think is really, really well done. And so that's my comparison of the two. Otherwise, but like I said, we're moving forward. We're going to be focusing a little bit more on the T virus. So, like I said, that is the end of Resident Evil 2. We are not done quite yet, because Resident Evil 3 will finish off our Raccoon City story. And plus, the two games were very clearly being designed at the same time. And so I'm really excited to move forward into Resident Evil 3. So with that being said, let us officially close things out for the night. Thank you all for joining, and I will see you all later.